Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lucifer, as well as the latest episode of Gotham. Like always, if I end up talking about something that you don't want to listen to, maybe you didn't catch the latest episode or something I'm talking about, you can always look in the description down below, and I include the time slots on when I start talking about each of the respective shows that I'm talking about, so just skip to what you want to listen to. Also, side note, in case you're listening to this and like, oh, well, what about Supergirl? There's a new episode and everything. Well, because of the whole crossover thing, I kind of brought this up last week, but I'm kind of reiterating it here. Supergirl won't go up with the rest of these because I'm going to be putting everything, the CW DC shows like, Supergirl, Flash, Arrow, and Legends all together, and it'll be going up Friday. So in case you're wondering about that, as well as everything else later on this week. So I want to go ahead and get that out there. The first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Lucifer. So basically, there's a whole situation of the fact is Lucifer stood up Chloe last episode. Well, obviously, beginning we have the whole bomb situation. I was thinking it was Lucifer who showed up in time to stop her, but it turns out it's not Lucifer. It was actually Aminadol who stopped her and being like, "You don't want to do this, Mom." She's like, "It's the best way. It's the only way I'm gonna get Lucifer back." He's like, he cares about Chloe. I don't know why, but he does. And it's like, if you kill her, Lucifer would do everything in his power to find out who did that, and if he finds out you're the one that did it, Lucifer will lose all patience with her because Chloe's very important to him. It's he's always been kind of hesitant to send her back to hell. It's like at this moment he'd do everything in his power to make sure she goes back to hell. Hell, he might even go out of his way to kill her. I mean, because Aminadol brings up a good point. It's because she's like, well, she's just just an insignificant human. Like, how could she be any that important? But then Aminadol points out, did you forget he killed Uriel as a means of protecting her? Yes, I'm surprised his mom didn't interject and be like, well, it was also for me too. It seems like she might have went there, but it's nah, Chloe was the main reason why he did that. It's yeah, he cares about his mom, sure, but still, on a scale of who's more important, Chloe's leaps and bounds above his mother. So it's for him, Chloe hasn't abandoned him like his mom has. So his mom decides their mom decides to take a different tactic about it. Essentially, she represents Perry, the guy that killed Chloe's dad that she busted 2 episodes ago. Basically, she's representing him because their witness was that guy Boris, the one that Dan and Lucifer did the sting operation to get towards, the one they met in that kind of a sauna. Well, apparently he's dead now. His head got chopped off and got sent to the police station. So now it's kind of up to them to kind of prove their case. And you have Charlotte representing it, which kind of screws over both Lucifer, Chloe, and Dan because it's oh, he slept with her. Which I love that whole conversation with Ella, because Ella's oh, so it's finding out is that Charlotte's the woman that's defending the guy that killed your ex-wife's dad. And he's like, how did you know? She's like, well, I noticed this blonde hair on you, and it couldn't have been Chloe's, and also this lipstick, it was a certain shade. It's no, it's not too sexy. So I'm thinking it's oh yeah, a lawyer's wearing. He's like, really? You got it? Really? It's just no, you idiot. It's I figured it out because it's the moment Chloe mentioned Charlotte's name, your butt clenched like crazy. You got all tensed up and everything. I love Ella. She's so good. She's so amazing. I also love those things that Lucifer said in this episode. The fact is that he was oh yeah, about your dad's trial. He's don't worry, I'll be your emotional jockstrap. And you because this is also an episode that brought back Chloe's mom too, because she's here for the trial and everything. And she kind of points out the fact is that she's kind of acting, because Lucifer kind of sees that she is a little calmer. I mean, as you can tell, it's eating away at Chloe, which is eating away at her mom too. But her mom's an actor; she's had practice at it, especially 16 years ago, so it's easier for her. And then he's just kind of oh, I guess it's butt stuff. And he's like, yeah, it's easier the second time around. It's okay, and I just love it. And the means of trying to make things better, which, I mean, really quickly pointing it out, is Sharif Atkins, the actor who is playing a prosecutor in this episode. Main thing I know him from was White Collar. It's been a while, so I don't remember his character's name. But he was one of the main FBI agents in White Collar. So I was the moment I saw him, is that him? And then I saw his name, and I was oh, that's so cool. But nevertheless, Lucifer volunteers to go on stand and, like always, charms the hell out of everyone. And I love how, basically he reenacted the whole sauna situation with Boris, and everyone's so captivated by him and everything. He's oh, could I have one more thing to say? And Charlotte's no, and the judge is no, go on, Mr. Mr. Morningstar. He's like, oh yeah, and he points at the fact that he's like, hey, Chloe is the best. She's a great cop. She's very, you should feel safer because it's like her and the police are like doing a good job. And it's like more so than anything, Chloe's a good cop. She's a very smart and capable person, and you want her out there doing her job. So don't second guess her and thinking she did anything bad. But then Charlotte kind of twisted on Lucifer and brings up the fact is that Chloe was the first one on the scene. But Lucifer, being the way he isn't willing to lie about it. Because that's just one thing. Like, no matter what, he will never lie to anyone. That's kind of his thing. Like, and he won't lie to it. I guess because it's like, even though he is kind of Lucifer, doesn't mean anything about, being like, oh, deceitful and whatnot. Like, he always believes in the truth. That's why he always has people speak their desires, speak their truth, because it's like, he doesn't like lies. But she basically twisted him around to make it seem like Chloe could have easily been the one that killed him because she followed him there and everything. Plus, the report said it was Dan who was first on the scene. So the contradiction, which in itself kind of pisses Chloe off because she thinks like because she can tell there's something between Lucifer and Charlotte that she's just not sure about. And it's like, she's just upset about everything, and it's just kind of like she feels like if anyone was to tell her any information, it had to be Lucifer, which is heartbreaking because that's what this whole thing is about, tearing them apart. Because for Lucifer's mom, she wants to prove to Lucifer that Chloe isn't as dedicated to him as he is to her. Like the fact that the feelings essentially aren't mutual, that he will always have her back, but Chloe won't. Like, kind of given the opportunity, she'll turn on him in an instant, show him that Chloe's not worthy of his attention or his feelings, just because it's like she wants to go back home, and it's like Chloe's the last lingering thing keeping him here. So it's kind of like she snuffs her, doesn't, obviously she can't kill her, so it's like she has to find a more creative way of doing it, so getting her out of the picture. But even going as far as offering Chloe a position, being like, hey, you turn on Lucifer, I will kind of get him to plead, Perry to plead, guilty, like avoid the death sentence. But she's like all for what? It's like, yeah, I'll turn on him. All you have to do is go on the stand and say that Lucifer is a liar. And then Chloe had an opportunity, but she didn't go for it. She's like, Lucifer's a lot of things, but he is not a liar. And it's like, she's like, he's the best partner. And the prosecutor's like, let's strike what Chloe's saying because it's like it could be used to kind of prove Perry's innocent. But it's like it filled Lucifer's heart with pride, because it's like he was always conflicted, because it's like Linda kind of brings it up. It's like, how you feel about her. You're just you're scared. You didn't, because she was like, oh, how did it dinner go? It's like, oh, you went on a date with Chloe. It's like, not just asking from a professional standpoint, also as a friend too, she was asking too. So it's kind of like, oh, she's like, oh, so enamored. I mean, it's also because it's like, here you got Lucifer himself, the devil himself, going on a date with one of your friends. It's like, it's kind of a monumental moment. It's because it's like, oh, you wouldn't think that the devil himself would be smitten by anybody, let alone someone you consider a friend, and everything. So, but it's like he didn't go, and it's like, you're lying to yourself, Lucifer. And I guess that's kind of what kind of reflected in this episode, is because the fact of the matter is he bluntly said it, like he doesn't like lies. And so I guess he kind of has to admit to himself, is like, yeah, he has feelings for Chloe, but got brought up last episode, he's just scared because he doesn't want her to see the real him, because he's afraid of how she might react. I was halfway expecting, with the way things were at near the end of the episode, I was like halfway expecting him to be like, okay, since we're being honest here, the truth. She's like, oh, what I said on stand was the truth. And I was like, okay, so is he going to, and it's like, I was like halfway expecting him to kind of like transform, but apparently that's not the case. I was like, oh, this is going to be the moment he tells her the truth. I get the feeling like by the time this season ends, maybe it won't be, but it's just because I brought a comparison to iZombie, because like Liv ended up telling her partner Clive about her being a zombie and everything. So I got the feelings like, yeah, this is season 2. That was in season 2. So maybe Lucifer's going to end up telling Chloe the truth by the end of the season at some point. Because what ended up being the case is that Amenadel ended up finding out the truth. I mean, this is like all after he pissed Maze off because Maze like found out the fact is that he lied to her. Like, cause basically he was saying like, oh, like the fact is I miss you. You know, it was just him trying to make excuses so that he could search for the bomb and pull it off Chloe's car. But Maze had found it first, and she was like, oh yeah, one, tell your mom that as long as I'm here, she's not going anywhere near Chloe. Two, next time, don't lie to me. Which, what he said was meant to distract her so that he could get closer to the car, but it wasn't 100% a lie because he does miss her. He does miss spending time with her because he does have feelings for her. And kind of a talk he had with Linda ended up pointing out the fact is that he has his sense of, not really like, kind of a sense of like the ends justify the means. Like he does what he has to do, but doing what you have to do doesn't change the fact is that you're still hurting people that care about you. In the case of Maze, like even with her whole situation, she seems a little hot-headed and whatnot, and she seems like she blew up his car out of like, oh, her being irrational. It's like, oh, let's face it, the bomb was underneath your car. Like, the fact is, the conversation never really tilted towards the way that it makes it seem like he knows that she knows about the whole celestial thing. Maybe it's kind of already just established because, like, everyone knows that she knows. But nevertheless, it's kind of like, I don't know, it never came up. And she never, I guess because the whole Lucifer thing, she's not willing to ask him about his angel aspects. Or maybe it's just because, like, she feels like, well, he's lost his powers and stuff, so it's kind of a sore spot, so she didn't bring it up. Or maybe it's just kind of like, maybe he legitimately hasn't been informed. Maybe he thinks like, oh yeah, Maze is just crazy and stuff like that. Maybe that's what he's kind of letting, he's like, just letting Linda think that. Or maybe, like I said, maybe they did. It's just kind of, it could be interpreted anyway. It wasn't like outright being like, I mean, it kind of comment on the fact of her being very evil, devilish, but it's like, other than that, they never really went into detail like that. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. But he went to kind of apologize, and there he ends up meeting Chloe's mom, who's like, do I know you? I was like, wait, well, what's up with this? I was like, have you crossed paths before? I was like, oh, could this have been the time you came to collect Chloe's dad's soul or something like that? Could have been something like that. I was like, no, that couldn't be it, because it's like, that would have been at the store where he died. You wouldn't have came for him much later like that. I mean, it's like, now this is at the hospital or something like that. Just like the whole situation with Malcolm last season, like he was kind of walking the hallway and stuff like. But nevertheless, I was like, no, it couldn't be that. And he ended up finding out from a minute he tells his mom the truth, that about 35 years ago, God sent him on a mission just to kind of bless this family that couldn't have a child. He never really thought much of it because God never asked him to do it again. And then he met that woman again, now realizing that miracle child is Chloe. So now we're kind of getting into that territory of answering what's so special about Chloe. And it turns out that she was kind of like a miracle born. Like she's obviously, we've already known she's special because the whole fact of what she does to Lucifer makes him mortal and everything. So it's, the kind of thought process is, it's like, hey, this is all planned. God planned for Lucifer and Chloe to meet. Like, for her to be able to do what she does to Lucifer is on purpose. They were always meant to meet. And to Amenadel, he takes it as like, I'm a pawn in all this. He was sent to Earth by his dad for the sole purpose of bringing Lucifer back. But it's like, the fact is, if him and Chloe were always supposed to meet, then it's kind of like I was just kind of a part to play in bringing them together, essentially playing a role in a kind of a mediator with them, and it's just kind of like, he's already had his problems, realizing the whole situation with Uriel. It's kind of like God could have stopped that, but he didn't. And so now that, on top of like finding out, it's like this whole situation was a setup to begin with, that basically what he came here to do, his mission, basically meant nothing, because it was just he was like a small piece of a greater plan that he knew nothing about. Which does beg the question, like, why is it that God put, because it's like, you take your different interpretations and stuff like that. It's like Lucifer is God's favorite, and maybe it's because he wanted his son to have a change. And maybe, because my thought process is, maybe this isn't just about Lucifer. Maybe it's also about Amenadel too. Like, the reason why he could have sent anybody, but he sent his eldest there, the firstborn, to deal with this whole situation. So maybe it's not just Lucifer he's trying to change. Maybe he's trying in a non-interfering way per se, kind of letting the cogs for everything. Because the thing is, things still have to play out their certain ways. Like, the fact of the matter is Lucifer and Chloe still had to meet and become partners like they did. That kind of came about its own way, but at the same time you could be like, well, no, because, you know, God still kind of greased the wheels a bit. So, and but then you have Lucifer's mom being like, basically Chloe's the answer to Amenadel getting his powers back, as well as them all returning to heaven and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like there's a lot more to that. Like, it's one of those situations where it's like, you know, Amenadel's taking it the way he is, but it's like maybe there's a lot more to the plan that he doesn't realize. And like I said, like, it's not just a pawn. He has his part to play in all this too. I think when the time comes, he will side with Lucifer. But for right now, it seems like he's siding with their mom. But I think ultimately when the time comes, he will side. I don't know how this whole situation with their mom is going to end up. Will she be put back in hell? Will we see God kind of pop up? Will we see her die? I mean, it's kind of hard to say where that might go. I'm leaning towards it. I don't think they'd outright kill her. I mean, because, like, granted, she's a goddess, so I think even someone like Lucifer would have a hard time fighting her. I mean, maybe that's what's really keeping Amenadel from accessing his power. Maybe God kind of stripped him of his powers because he wants Amenadel to see things the way they really are. Amenadel's kind of been blind to things. He doesn't see the path that he's supposed to be on. He thinks that he's fallen, but he hasn't. I mean, and even if he has, it's kind of like because even though Lucifer fell and just kind of washed over hell and whatnot, like, he's changed as a person. Like, coming to Earth changed him, meeting Chloe changed him. And maybe this whole plan also means affecting Amenadel. I don't know. But it's like, in what shape or form is what about Chloe is so special and that makes her like a miracle child? Like what did Amenadel do? Maybe it's like, maybe she's mixed with a little celestial power because he's an angel that kind of helped create life. He kind of gave the spark that gave birth to Chloe in that regard. Like I said, I'm very glad that we're kind of getting an answer to that question that has been popping up since season 1. I am curious to know if this season is going to be longer than the first season or not, just because based on like once again, iZombie, like, its first season was only 13 episodes, but the second season was like a little bit longer. So I'm wondering if they're going to do that here, or are they going to make it another 13 episode season? So I mean, either way, I'm fine with it either way. But I'm just curious just to see, like, because if that's the case, there's only like a very few episodes left. But it's just astounding that things have kind of getting to this point, and it's just like, it feels so bad because it's just like, even with things playing out the way they are, even with knowing that his mom tried to kill Chloe, it still isn't enough for him to act. Even Mason's like, dude, she tried to kill Chloe. Why aren't you doing anything? You know, I mean, for more so than anything, for Lucifer, it's just kind of like, I guess because to him, his mom's just kind of a, she's doing her own thing. I don't care. Like, more so than anything, it's like, does Chloe hate me? You know? And at the end of the episodes, it seemed like they might be about the kiss and everything. Other interesting things in this episode, obviously, the whole Dan situation, especially when Lucifer found out. It's like, you what? And he got super pissed. Which, you know, Lucifer kind of seemed to forgive him because Lucifer didn't even bring it up. He could have done that. He could have easily brought it up to Chloe, but he didn't because he knows it was, I think on some level he knows that really his mom was just manipulating Dan, so it's not 100% his fault. Because it's like, for Dan, he was a little vulnerable. It's like, hey, him and Chloe are splitting. He's like, oh, he thinks this like super attractive lady is like really into him and everything, but it's like, turns out she was just using him. I wonder will that kind of like because I guess in her mentality, in her mind, she's kind of thinking like, oh yeah, like, we can just keep doing what we're doing, but it's like, that's not going to happen. I mean, granted, she kind of has her, you know, like I said, I do wonder, like, she does have a bit of her goddess power, which kind of works like Lucifer's power, where he kind of gets people kind of swept up with him. So it's like she kind of has a similar thing. So, you know, and he might not have a choice when it comes to that. I mean, if his will is strong enough. I mean, you never see that anymore with Dr. Martin and Lucifer, because in the beginning that was kind of the thing, she was kind of swooned over by him, but that's no longer an issue. Maybe it's just because Lucifer kind of shut that part of him off. Because, like, for him, it's like the only person that he really cares about is Chloe. So it's like anyone. I mean, for one, Chloe's naturally immune to that. So maybe he doesn't really do it per se. I don't know. Like, it seems like I'm wondering, is that really a conscious thing, or does he do that subconsciously? But like I said, because it's like Chloe's the only woman he interested in, it would make sense subconsciously. It's like it naturally activates, but it's like, you know, he doesn't really think about it. I don't know. But, you know, Lucifer does understand the fact is that Dan was trying his best to make up that situation for what happened. He even does an amazing job later on because he ends up kind of going a little rogue, kind of doing something similar to what he kind of got him into trouble in the first place in season 1. And that basically was like, oh yeah, Perry, you got out. Awesome for you. But you should know the fact is you killed Boris, and the Russians are going to be super pissed. I mean, I'd hate to be around when they kind of find out about what you did. And at the end of the episode, we see them taking him away, and the one person with him is Maze, and she's like, I'm quite surprised that you did something like that. He's just like, drive. So it's kind of interesting seeing that darker side of Dan, but it's also because it's like, Dan realizes like what happened, you know, because he blames himself more so than anything, because it's like things would not have played out that way if he had not kind of got caught up with Charlotte. So he blamed himself, so he felt the need to fix it, especially because he realized that, you know, hearing what Chloe had to say about Lucifer in court, that he's such an amazing partner. It's like, I guess in some way you could look at it as like, for Dan, it's like he wasn't there for Chloe. Lucifer actually was. He's been there for her this entire time, and I haven't. You know, I haven't been the best partner. I could have been her best partner, but I've kind of fallen through on that front. So, like I said, also seeing the darker side of him too, which does beg the question, like, because I vaguely remember that kind of being a thing in season 1, like Maze and Dan, like they're kind of being a thing. They're not necessarily a thing, but it's like there might be hints of something there. The fact is that she sees his darker side now might make her lean more towards Dan, which I love about that whole situation was the fact that she's like, oh, talking about finding out about the person who gave all the information to your mom. It's like, oh, look, who's here, Dan. It's like, oh, yeah, you try to penetrate her. And then Dan kept looking like, okay, what are you getting at? What are you talking about? She's like, yeah, of course I'm trying to help out or whatever. You know, this is for Chloe's sake. And then she kept going with the innuendos and everything. And he's like, you know, don't you? So, and then also, speaking of Maze, we kind of got to see her get all kick-ass in this episode, fighting that guy with the 2 swords and kicking his ass pretty effortlessly. It's like, you know, because Dan was like, oh, there's no way I'm going up against him. He's like, okay, I admire, you know, if it meant, you know, getting your ass kicked and everything, I'd find it funny, but it's like, no, I came here to win, so Maze is the one that's going to take him on. Maze was about to kill him, and then, like, Lucifer calls her off, be like, okay, don't kill him. It's like, really? It's like, okay, plus you get to walk away with 2 new toys, so be happy, which I like those swords. They look pretty awesome. You know, I mean, I'm a fanatic about swords and whatnot. But I also learned the fact is that Lucifer speaks many different languages. I mean, it doesn't really come up that often, so it's kind of interesting. The fact is, Dan was like, you speak Chinese? He's like, yeah, I speak all languages. So, but apparently that's something, I guess, a celestial being thing. I mean, maybe it's just being a former angel. He kind of knows all languages, because it doesn't apply to Maze, because Maze was like, I don't know what they're saying. So it's not a demon thing. It's just a celestial, like maybe not just necessarily a celestial, kind of what's celestial being / you know, angel thing, and just automatically knowing every language. So that was kind of cool. Overall, just an awesome episode. A lot of fun. A lot of just like, but at the same time, very sad. Just that it kind of a sad story, and just kind of like, just the fact is that his mom would go that far just to kind of put a strain on his and Chloe's relationship, just to kind of break them apart so that she could, you know, like it's you'll understand where she's coming from, because it's like, oh yeah, I want to bring my family together, that includes Lucifer. But at the same time, it's like, you don't care about your family. All this is about is getting back the power you had. And the thing is, the one thing Amenadal hasn't asked, I mean, he asked his mom, he's like, no more hiding stuff from me, tell me what your plan is. But it's like, the fact is, you've never asked, what does your mom plan to do the moment she gets back to heaven? You already know she's not a fan of humanity. Who's to say she decides not just to wipe them out, just to spite God? You know, just to like be like, oh, middle finger to him. It's like, oh, these are your toys, these things you cherish so much. Well, boom, they're gone. So it's like, you don't think about that. Especially because it's like, this world isn't just for Lucifer anymore. Bringing it up again, like, it's important to Amenadal too, because of, you know, someone like Linda. Linda's an important friend to kind of everyone. Lucifer relies on her. She's Maze's friend. She's even a friend to Amenadal. So it's kind of like, that's one person in this world you definitely wouldn't want. Plus, Amenadal does care about the rest of the world. That's kind of like, you know, kind of reason why he wanted them not to be there, because it's like, them being celestial beings is kind of throwing everything off balance and stuff like that. So another thing I am curious about is, like, you know, like I said, we got a little taste of it this season with Uriel popping up, but it's like, will we see any more of his, because he's got many other siblings. So it's like, will we cross paths with other? I'm still wondering about Azrael. Like, where the hell is she? Like, I still get the feeling like maybe Lucifer's mom had something to do with the whole blade being here in the first place. Uriel having it. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. I don't know. That was just kind of my thought process, like that I brought up last time. But it's like, just for Yuri to get his hands on it. Like I said, maybe he just got smart. But it's like, why wouldn't Azrael come to reclaim her blade at any point in time? Why hasn't she still come to get? It's like, where is the blade now? Because the last time we saw it was in Lucifer's possession. But it's like, you can't outright destroy something like that. I don't think even someone like Lucifer would have a hard time destroying it. I think. Part of me wonders, like, also kind of throwing it out there as a theory, it's just kind of in the back of my mind. What if, like, the whole thing with Uriel was a setup? What if Uriel's not dead and he actually faked his death? And that was kind of all part of God's plan, too. I don't know. Like, there's so many possibilities. Sadly, we won't get any answers until January when the show comes back. So, it sucks, but I'm just eagerly awaiting to see where it goes, especially like him and Chloe. It's just like, yo, we've been building this up. There's obviously something there. They're very flirtatious, but now it's kind of coming to the surface. Chloe's kind of possibly realizing she might have feelings for Lucifer. Lucifer's definitely realizing he has feelings for her. They were almost about to kiss at the end of the episode. I saw previews from the next episode. Seems like they get interrupted. Of course, it's not going to play out like that. Makes you wonder if that happens. Does that mean there's going to be something special that happens? I don't know. There's so many questions, so many possibilities. But like I said, we'll have to wait to January to find out. And now moving on to this week's episode of Gotham, a crazy episode where we have at the very beginning Mario murdering that lab dude by squishing his head. It's like, dude, that's so brutal. It's like, I don't know why, like, I can't handle that. Head squishing just kind of, just the way the blood splurts out and everything like that. You even got to see his head from a certain angle later on in the episode. But Jim's kind of like, hey, he kind of points it out. It's like, okay, this is connected to blood. Harvey was like, okay, there's no way. And he's like, yeah, it's definitely connected to the blood. And he ends up, getting attacked by Mario, which in Mario's mind, he's like, because that's kind of the thing. Like, Mario is kind of like, okay, no, I'm not going to kill you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that Lee hates you and she will hate you. Then I'll kill you. Because it's like he wants to break, the trust and love that Lee kind of has for him and then end up, destroying Jim afterwards. Now, the thing is, I was thinking about, it's like, okay, we know they thought the possibility that Tetch injected him. What if, just throwing it out there as a possibility, what if Mario worked with Tetch on purpose for two reasons. One, because, Tetch kind of got inside of his head about Jim and everything without hypnotizing him, but got inside of his head and everything. And he's like, no, make it so that I can take care of Jim if it need be. And it's like, oh, gave him some of her blood. Like, I feel like that whole situation is like, I don't know, they kind of show you a little flashback of how it might have happened. That's from Jim's perspective. We don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know. Because it's like with the whole situation about Barnes, when Barnes was found out by Jim, he didn't play that. Granted, it did different things for them. For Barnes, it tapped into that cop side of his brain that wants justice. For Mario, it tapped into the jealousy in his heart when it comes to Lee and everything. So, I don't know. I just feel like there might be a little bit more, especially, I can't remember if I brought it up last episode, but the fact is that, because Carmine kind of brings it up, like the fact is that there's something with Mario and the the Court of Owls, which he doesn't bring that up to Jim because the only other people other than Falcone that know about them is Bruce and them. So, but nevertheless, so it makes you wonder: was it not actually Tetch who did that? Maybe it was actually the Court of Owls that did that to him on purpose. Is because, like, as it's because like I said, I don't remember I brought it up, but it does seem like there are some kind of dealings going on, because eventually later on in the episode, Falcone was kind of like, I knew there was something up with him. I didn't know he was infected with Tetch's blood, but he knew there was something up, because the fact is he has some kind of dealings with them. It's like the fact, because the thing is, Mario is supposed to be on a straight and narrow, but it's like, why would you consort with a group like the Court of Owls? Like, that's not a good thing. So why would he do that? I don't know. That in itself, there's still many questions about that, which I guess we'll kind of get, we'll get answers to maybe later on. But for right now, just moving along with things. He is such a manipulator in this situation that he basically lets himself get arrested and tested 3 times to kind of prove like, hey, I'm not actually infected with the virus. He even, trying to turn because it gets to the point everyone's against Jim. Even Harvey's like, okay, Jim, you're acting a little crazy. It's like, oh, obviously you're jealous. It's like, I'm not jealous. He's obviously infected, because Jim had that whole conversation with Tetch, which I'm like, even if you did the whole wordplay thing, is maybe, his hubris got the best of him and he just kind of let stuff slip. But I feel like I was halfway expecting a smile across his face when Jim was walking away. It's like, so was there truth to that? Or could it be that the fact is that, that he legitimately let it slip, or did he do that on purpose because he knew things were going? Because the thing is, I don't think Mario and Tetch have had any contact, so it's kind of like, that's a question though. Maybe Tetch isn't acting on his own, maybe he has gotten influence from the Court of Owls, like I said, because it's like, the fact is, the way Tetch was acting, it does seem like there was validity to the way Jim thought the whole situation went down with him just injecting him, which, like I said, explaining Mars and everything. But it seems like the Court of Owls might have a position to play in this too, because it does seem like they knew about him being ejected, being tainted with Alice's blood, even before Falcone or Jim knew. So, but the fact of the matter is, like, trying to prove it is a lot easier said than done, because it's just kind of like, he even has Victor at one point hold Jim back to a certain time limit, just so it gives him more time. Like, Jim gets there, tells Lee everything, but Lee's like, he's already told me. The fact is, you're up here accusing him, even have him arrested on our wedding day. You should be ashamed of yourself, Jim. And Jim's like, why can't you believe me? Just because, it's like, I know I'm sounding jealous. And like I said, that's the whole point. And Jim's kind of realizing that too, especially when he ends up telling her, it's like, please don't marry him, and ends up telling her the truth, what he's been hiding this entire time. The fact is, bringing up what we saw at the very beginning of the season, and that's, he tracked Lee down, but he saw her with Mario, so he decided not to go in. And it's like, he's loved her, he's always loved her, he was just afraid, he just couldn't muster it, he was too ashamed to confront her, like, after he got out of jail, so he couldn't really move on. He felt like he had to fix everything first, and then he could gain back some pride, I guess, kind of like be able to hold his head a little bit higher, because he dealt with anything, and then he can kind of build up the courage to confront Lee, but it didn't work out that way. Lee, as I'm sure Mario planned, she was super pissed about it and slaps him, because it's like, how dare you? It's like, this is the day I'm getting married. Like, Jim had plenty of other opportunities to tell her, but he's like, you take this opportunity where I'm getting married on my wedding day to do this to me. And it's like, how dare you? And it's just like I said, Jim sadly fell into Mario's trap, especially kind of sad later on when you see like Mario's dudes beating the crap out of him. Now, whether those are necessarily Mario's dudes, they're more likely Falcone's dudes, because it's like Falcone's not about to have Jim kind of screw up his son's happy day. But then Harvey and the others kind of find out, they're like, yeah, because Lucius kind of figures out, there's like, oh, there's actually a possibility he did fake it. There is a possibility for that. And it's like, it warrants them kind of to bring him back in and kind of capture him. So Jim finds out, goes to Falcone and everything. Like I said, Falcone doesn't mention anything about the group, but he's like, don't worry, Jim, I can't have you go there, because it's like, you might kill my son, so I can't have the opportunity. So I'm gonna send my guys. He's like, oh, you mean these guys? Jim turns around, shoots both of them, and then he's like, you got any more guys? I'm like, dude, that's so badass of you, Jim. I don't know. I thought that was super cool, super badass. Just the point he made by doing that, and just promise me you won't kill my son. It's like, no, I won't, because it's like, hey, this is kind of the new and improved Jim Gordon, still struggling with those demons, because even Tetch kind of points it out. It's like, the fact is, he's like, I can't wait to see, I'm so interested to see what my sister's blood does to you, because there's a beast inside of you waiting to come out, and the kind of that darker side that in that trip he had that his father brought up. The fact is, like, hey, we kind of have that darker side to us, like we struggle with it all the time. So even with everything said and done, Mario asks her, he's like, please tell me, I'll ask you once, I won't ever ask you again. She's like, the fact is, there'll always be a part of me that loves Jim Gordon. That's never going to change, but at the very least, I still love you, and that's, I chose you. Which is like, I don't think I get it, you're being honest with him, which is good, but it's like, two things. One, it's like the worst time to be honest with him with this whole thing, which I really appreciate. The fact is that they do, like, even, like, I know it's outright proven that he is infected with the blood and everything, but it's like, they did such a good job of him faking it, because it's like, because for Lee, out of anyone, I guess it never crossed her mind to ever consider, I guess, because it's like, at that point in time, it's like, at what point would he have gotten, injected with the blood or whatever. So it's but it's like, like I said, it's just because of circumstances. It's because of the way he did things. If he had gone to Lee first, maybe things would be different. But the fact is that Mario knows Jim. He knew what moves and what things to do and say that kind of catch Jim off guard. Because even at points, taunting him is like, who's to say I am infected? Or maybe I am. Just like I said, he did a very good job of kind of hiding that away. Because it's like, because the same thing happened with Barnes. You never saw the red markings. Because it's like, there's a certain point where it seems like the mind and the body and the blood kind of meld together, where it's no longer like you, like I said with Barnes, you no longer saw his eyes kind of going red, like he was hulking out a bit. It does seem like he kind of stabilized, like there was kind of equilibrium in his body, that he would completely submitted to the blood. So I was wondering, like, it doesn't seem like that's the case with Mario, because at the end of it, he's still got the eyes and everything, but he comes after Lee for what she said. And Jim shows up in time just to shoot him, but then the knife flies out his hand, and Lee's turning to look at him, and Jim's like, oh, I screwed up big time, because it's like, now it looks like he just came there and shot Mario for no reason. And that's kind of where the episode ended with that storyline. And it's just kind of like, that sucks, dude. Because it's like, dude, you went through so much. And it's just like, that's how that plays out. But, I mean, I hope, something happens where it's kind of like Mario gets up and it kind of still hulked out a little bit, and because Jim shot him once to my knowledge. It looked like he might have shot him more than once, but it's like, you promised not to kill him. But granted, it's like, Lee's life is more important to Mario for you. And it's like, Jim, what have you done? You tried to kill him. Maybe Mario ends up going to the hospital. Like, it's kind of funny, because I brought up this scenario. The fact of the matter is, but I didn't include the blood. I didn't think of that as a possibility at the time. But when Mario originally punched him, I was like, oh, maybe Mario kind of turns Lee against him, which is kind of what ended up happening. So that was kind of interesting. Like I said, the whole blood aspect to it, didn't even think about that. There's that whole thing with his needle. I don't remember even what I said back then when that originally happened back in the Red Queen episode about that, like that thing. I don't know. It just, that just kind of, I don't know. Anyway, the other side of the episode, well, I guess we'll start off with the whole Penguin and Ed situation, where you have Barbara being like, toying around with him. It's just like, okay, you don't get it. Obviously, Penguin's the one that did it. And he's like, what? For one, Penguin would never do that. He's my friend. She's like, yeah, if he's in love with you. Wait, you're suggesting he's in love with you? It's like, there's no way he's in love with you. There's nothing like that between us. And she's like, okay, you believe that if you want to. It's like, he was following his heart. It's like, you were being taken away by the woman that you loved. And so basically, Ed, what brings up the fact is that Barbara's like, you want something out of this. What is it? She's like, in due time. So basically, it's just like, don't you owe it to that librarian to kind of find out the truth? And so he kind of proposes something to Oswald. He's kind of like, hey, the fact is that, we're friends, right? And the fact is, I want more. And then, like, Penguin's kind of like, oh, I know, right? Like, I felt it too, like, love. And he's like, whoa, love. I meant we go further as business partners. And then, you see Penguin kind of shocked, and then Ed kind of storms away like he's hurt, but he's not. And there's a moment later on when Penguin's accepting, or giving an award or something. And you see in Ed's mind, he's thinking about stabbing Penguin. But then he's like, he hugs him and everything. He's like, well, I want you to remember that you are my best friend. I want you to always remember that, after doing what he's about to do, which he sides with Barbara, Butch, and Tabitha to take down Penguin. He doesn't want to kill Penguin. He just wants to destroy him. Like, it's so interesting, because it's like, because I was always wondering about that. Like, how is this whole mayor thing going to help? Like, how that's all going to play out? Because I knew it wasn't going to last long. I knew eventually things would fall apart, because obviously he's got to return to being a straight up criminal. So basically, I'm sure they're going to destroy him on different fronts. Maybe when it comes to his money, to his power, to his reputation. Chip away at it bit by bit, because the fact of the matter is that Penguin doesn't know that Ed knows that he's the one that killed Isabella. Like, and once again, still, even after you've gone through the trouble of killing a woman, you still can't get her name right. You got it 95% right, but you can't go to 100. It's like, Isabella. It's like, right. It's like, you still can't get it right. But like I said, I thought it was going to be interesting, because it's like with Ed, because for Ed, it's like, Penguin has been like the only real friend he's had in a very long time. The only other person that's really understood him. As he said it himself, it's like, I want you to understand, like, you are my best friend. I want you to understand. I want you to know that. So as I'm destroying you, I want you to understand that you were my best friend, but I have to do this because you killed a woman I loved. So it's like he had a second chance at love, and Penguin kind of stripped that away from him. So like I said, I am curious to see how that will all conclude in that regards of like, will Penguin have to cast aside his feelings to do what needs to be done and take care of Ed? I mean, there's so many possibilities that might work out. And then finding out what Barbara wanted out of all this. Basically, she wants Ed's help to kind of take over things. She wants to kind of run Gotham, essentially. Take everything that Penguin has and kind of make it her own. Have the other families kind of look up to her and respect her. And it's like, if anyone can do it, it's kind of Ed, because he's a smart guy, he's a strategist. I'm sure even Ed realizes that he's being used, which is kind of the whole point. She's not hiding the fact that she's using him, but the fact of the matter is the whole situation with Tabitha and Butch. I brought it up last episode because she brings it up herself. It's like they'll end up destroying each other. And so, and during the case of this war, she's going to use him to get what she wants. Because personally, the first thing they got to do is get rid of Penguin. So I'm guessing she's making it seem like, okay, then she'll join up with Nigma to basically run the city. But to me, I'm looking at it as like the moment Nigma goes in for the kill, that's when Barbara will show up, take both of them out. Just because it's like, Tabitha and Butch need to get their revenge, especially Tabitha having lost her hand. I mean, she's got it back, so it's good. Which I love the fact is Nigma's kind of like, yeah, sorry about the hand. Just so nonchalant about it, not even really caring, So it's very interesting that we're getting to see her kind of trying to rise. Like, because before now, like, she's been beside other people, but this is her first time really, like, as we can see that she's kind of taken her own steps to becoming a criminal boss of her own. So it's going to be interesting seeing her kind of take the position to be like, hey, I'm going to run things around here. It's time for me, Barbara Keene, to run things, So we'll just have to wait to see how that all plays out. Like I said, there's no way Butch and Tabitha are going to easily let this go, as like they're obviously going to get the revenge too. So, and then final note of the episode is the whole situation with Bruce, as well as the Court of Owls situation, where we had essentially one of the last members of the Whisper Gang basically telling him like, hey, everyone else is dead. We've got to make a move now because there's no telling. Because apparently the assassin, his name is Talon. It's like, I think that was what they said it was. It's like, when did we get his name? Maybe they had mentioned it before. Maybe there was something I missed during the episode. They were like, oh yeah, this dude's name is Talon. Maybe this is the first episode. Maybe it's been brought up before. I don't remember. But hardcore assassin dude. It's like there's only a matter of time before he tracks us down. Basically, they have to break in and get the safe, avoid some like tripwire alarms on the floor. Like at first, Bruce was going to do it and everything, which in the back of my mind, I'm like, you're no Dick Grayson, which Dick Grayson and his family are were part of a circus act and whatnot. So it's like they could do it. I mean, but at this point in time, this is a young Bruce Wayne, so you won't have Dick being born for another decade plus, maybe. So I was like, okay, Bruce, you're willing to do it, but it's like, you do have Selena over there, like the thief. It's like, don't you think it makes sense to have her? She's very nimble, she's very fast. It's like, wouldn't you expect it to be her? I mean, obviously they end up going that route, but it's kind of like, why didn't you think of that first? But Selena just kind of kept, because it looked almost like she was staking out the place herself, trying to find out entry points and stuff like that. But she kept having a feeling like, oh, someone's behind, like someone's following us and everything, which I'll get to that in a second. But for her, she's kind of thinking it's stupid. It's like, this all happened because Bruce made a deal with them. Why would he do such a stupid thing, making a deal with the people who most likely killed his parents? And it's like, Alfred had said it straight, but like, he did it for your sake too. He did it to protect, not just for his own sake, but for the sake of everyone he cares about. You, me, Jim, anyone he considers a close friend that would be wiped out if the court, deems it necessary, because they would destroy everyone in his life before they come after him. Because the fact of the matter is, we still haven't got even a clear picture of what the court's going to do, because they've still got that fake Bruce, and what they plan to do with that, we'll just kind of have to wait to see. But I'm sure it has to deal with the whole, like, running Wayne Enterprise. It's like they have control of him, and then they can use him as a means of controlling Wayne Enterprises, like, kind of use him as a means of keeping quote unquote Bruce Wayne alive, while at the same time killing the real him. So it's kind of like, hey, we have this guy there, someone who won't be asking questions and stuff like that, which, if that's the case, his return is going to be very interesting, because there was something between him and Selena, but finding out like, hey, that her and Bruce are kind of boyfriend and girlfriend now. I even love it that Bruce brought it up 2 times in this episode. He's telling it to Alfred. Alfred's like, okay, yeah, young romance and everything, could we focus on the fact that we're going in there still something? And then later on he's like, oh, so does this mean you're my girlfriend? Selena's just like, shut up. It's like, it's so adorable. Like I say, it's just because it's like, it's so interesting to see the perspective of them meeting as kids, knowing where Batman and Catwoman end up as having the relationship they do. So, in the sense of where this story is, it does make you wonder how would their relationship be different, in the future when he's Batman, when she's Catwoman, how would their relationship be different? Side note, also the whole Alfred situation going up against talent like that. It's like you always forget how much of a badass Alfred is until he gets up and starts kicking ass. It's like, because like this show is my first time ever seeing Alfred being a badass. For more often than not, anytime my experience with him has always been like from the animated cartoons and stuff like that, where Alfred's older, he's a butler, just as simple as that. But it's like, it's like, because I remember someone a long time ago brought up the reference that Alfred's a badass. And I was like, really? I was like, maybe the certain iterations of him doesn't really show that. I mean, I guess, because a lot of those times Alfred is older, that's him older, and Bruce is already Batman. So obviously, like, this is Alfred when he's still kind of little youngish. He's not as spry as he used to be, but he still can handle his own, even going up against Talon. And then lo and behold, he gets saved by none other than Selina's mom, which I wasn't sure because I saw her name in the opening. I was like, is that who I think it is? And it turns out to be, it's Ivana, who I'm not going to like even try to pronounce her last name because I'm just going to butcher it. So I'm not going to do that. But I saw her name. I was like, I wasn't for sure. But it's like, most notably, like the thing I most note her from is Banshee, Carrie/Anna from Banshee. So I was like, I saw the name. I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, I think that's her. And it's like, she's playing Selina's mom, which is kind of like, okay, why is she in Selina's life? Selina doesn't seem all that happy to see her. So I don't know whether there's like more to that, like that. I mean, obviously we're going to get more to that story, but it's like, what exactly is that story? We just kind of have to wait to see. Also, what was that owl thing they stole? It looked like a clear statue, and it's like, is that really what the Court of Owls is afraid of? Like, is it, what's so special about it? We have no clue. So, like I said, so many questions. Sadly, much like Lucifer, no answers until January was when the show returns. So, a little bummed out, but I'm super excited to see where everything goes. It's like how the whole Jim and Lee situation is going to play out. Like, I'm very interested out of anything to find out about that. But also the Court of Owls, finding out a little bit more about them. And then the whole, because it's one of those things where it's like we have these separate storylines, but I'm pretty sure at some point those storylines are going to kind of meld together. I can't really remember if they really tend to do that. They don't necessarily. There is crossover between certain storylines because the whole Jim storyline hasn't really crossed over with the Bruce storyline too much, with the exception of the whole Ivy situation. But other than that, that hasn't come up yet. Which does beg the question: where is Ivy? I was assuming she was still in a manor or something, not less like Selina kind of gave her the boot. But it's like, it'd be kind of interesting to see how that all plays out, like when we come back. Like I said, I'm very interested to know what's up with Selina and her mom. Maybe that's where Selina kind of learned a lot of her skills. The fact is that she lives on the streets and whatnot makes it seem like her mom's not around. So it makes you wonder, did Selina run away or did she get abandoned? What the case may be? We'll just have to wait till January to find out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.